In this video, we're going to take a look at 5 time-saving tips for the key editor. First up, the step editor. Now, normally you might hit record and play notes into a MIDI keyboard, but the step editor, which you can turn on right here, allows us to enter MIDI information by step. So basically, we've got a blue line on the grid down the bottom. Now, we can record the pitch of the note that we're playing, the velocity of the note that we're playing on our external MIDI keyboard, and then we can use the quantise table to define at which point Cubase will step enter the notes that we play on our external keypad into Cubase, and it will record them. The great thing about recording like this is you don't need to worry about timing. You just take your time and think of what notes you're going to play next, and I guess get your fingers in the right shape to actually play the keys that you want to be entered into Cubase. As we change the quantise setting, we change the grid, and now if I use my cursor keys on my computer keypad, you can see that blue line moving and locking in with those vertical lines that are very obvious now on the grid. There's 4 of them per bar. Now, if I want, I can change the note length by going up to the length table right here. So I click on that, I get a drop-down menu. Let's make it a bit longer. Now I can play a chord and use the cursor keys on my computer keypad to enter a break or a rest. So we don't need to play notes straight after each other. One massive reason for using the step editor is to enter information which is technically difficult or challenging to play. So I've dropped the quantise setting to 1/16 and I'm playing notes on the MIDI keyboard, and I'm mindful of the velocity, and I'm using the right cursor key on my computer keypad to enter rests and space. Let's have a listen. Great. Now I can make that sound even more realistic by selecting all of the notes and then going up to this drop-down tab right here and using this slider to either shorten the notes, which is going to make it sound more punchy, or more importantly, to lengthen the notes, which is going to sound more like a real piano player. Some of the parameters inside of this note length drop-down tab are some of the best kept secrets in Cubase, and I'm going to show you a couple of absolute gems right now. First of all though, let's have a look at this string part. So we've got this big chord right here, and then it should cut out. And then another chord should kick in and then cut out. But there's something sustaining these notes over this bar. And you can see the visual representation is going, okay, well, it only lasts for a bar. But when we listen to it, it's definitely sustaining over the bar and into that space. And that's because the performer has used a sustain pedal. You can access really important control information down in the controller lane. So highlight a bunch of notes, then use your mouse to drag something like the velocity up and down. We can select everything, and watch this. If we pick up in the handle in the middle, drag it all the way to the top and then back down again, all of the velocities are even. So it's a neat way to be able to almost MIDI compress the parts that you have selected. Possibly not great for strings. In this little drop-down menu here, we can select a number of controls, including sustain. And now I can see the information which shows me when the sustain pedal has been activated and released. And now you can see that it's activated, and that's why that note is sustaining over into the bar where there's no real MIDI note information. So there's a neat little trick that we can do. Now, on the left-hand side, if I click on my track, I get different controls. But if I double-click on the MIDI event, I can see these controls, and I can see the length drop-down tab. And down here, I can click on this neat little icon right here. And straight away, my sustain markings are gone, and my notes are now perfectly sustained. And the note length has been altered to fit in exactly with how it sounds as it's coming out of Cubase. Pretty neat, huh? So you can get rid of your sustain markings and make sure everything is perfectly represented. Once again, I can use the note length to change how they're actually playing, and that would be the length of time a string player is actually bowing on the strings for. So I can shorten it. I can choose to use the legato setting to instantly translate it into something that's very smooth and sort of creamy. The notes are all going into the next note, which is perfect for strings. Or I can use this fader once again to truncate it or shorten the notes or lengthen it and use that slider to make sure that they're nice and smooth and all fitting together perfectly. I can solo the information that's housed inside of this editor window just by clicking on this button. Now this little record button here, or this icon, allows me to record a part and have it show up directly into this event that I'm working on. So as I'm playing these notes, you can see it's adding the notes on the grid, and it's also adding the notes into that representation of that orange event up in the project area of the window. Over in the chord editing drop-down menu, I can click on an arrow next to a chord type, find a note, and then grab my mouse and hold down and drag to the right, and instantly I've created a chord. Well, Cubase has created the chord, but I've chosen where the chord is going to go and how long the chord is going to play for. You can highlight a chord and simply change it at will. So it's a really neat way to be able to enter chords, especially if you're not too sure what you're doing. Once again, highlight a chord and go and change the flavor. You can also change the inversion. So that's doing things like moving the bottom note up to the top of the chord. It's the same note, it's just been played an octave higher. Or move the top note down. If I select all of the chords in the key editor and then go and select create chord symbols, as soon as I do that, up in the project window, we can just ignore all of this, you can hit OK, and you can see the chords that you have just created. And they're pretty fancy chords. So it's a really neat way of being able to create complex chords very quickly using the key editor. And you could then go and do a few more fancy things and get that chord track to drive everything that's going on inside of Cubase. And you can, of course, continue to compose using the chord track. As always, everything in Cubase works seamlessly together, and there's some amazing compositional tools. Thanks for taking the time to stop by. Please subscribe to the Cubase YouTube channel for plenty more videos just like this.